Hallo, hey meine Lieben, hier ist Simeon, herzlich willkommen zu meinem neuen Video. Ich habe heute für euch wieder was ganz Besonderes, ein Interview mit dem einmaligen, mit dem großartigen Shin Lim. Shin Lim ist momentan mit Sicherheit einer der berühmtesten Zauberkünstler auf der Welt. Ich denke, jeder von euch weiß, wer er ist. Ich denke auch, dass ich nicht allzu viel über ihn sagen muss. Ihr wisst mit Sicherheit schon, dass er FISM-Weltmeister war, dass er Penn und Teller zweimal gefüllt hat, dass er America's Got Talent gewonnen hat, dass er America's Got Talent Champions gewonnen hat. Das alles muss ich euch nicht erzählen. Was ich euch aber über ihn sagen kann, was ihr vielleicht noch nicht wisst: Shin ist ein ganz feiner, ganz bescheidener, ganz netter Typ. Der ist richtig super. Ich habe jetzt ein bisschen mehr mit ihm zu tun gehabt und ich war einfach erstaunt darüber, wie bodenständig, wie nett er ist. Leider war es für uns im Moment nicht möglich, uns zusammenzusetzen, aber ich habe ihm meine Fragen geschickt und er war so freundlich für mich, seine Antworten aufzunehmen, und dabei ist dieses Interview entstanden. Ich wollte von Shin natürlich wissen, wie er es geschafft hat, mit seiner besonderen Art und Weise Close-Up Magie zu performen, so erfolgreich zu sein. Ich wollte also ein bisschen sein Erfolgsgeheimnis erfahren und er hat tolle Informationen mit mir und mit euch geteilt. Und ich habe versucht, die wertvollsten Informationen, die wichtigsten Tipps für euch nochmal hervorzuheben. Und wenn ihr euch das Interview mit Shin anschaut, dann werden so ein paar Informationen, ein paar Übersetzungen von den wichtigsten Tipps auf der Seite auftauchen. Achtet also bitte darauf, achtet auf alles, was er sagt, weil er wirklich tolle Dinge sagt. Ich habe mich total gefreut, dass er es gemacht hat. Also ohne lange drum herum zu reden, ich wünsche euch ganz viel Spaß mit Shin Lim.
I didn't find my style immediately like this. It took a long time, actually. Even my show in Vegas, people can actually see differences within the month. So I'm always changing. I don't think I'll ever stay the same. I think I'm just changing to who I am as a person. You know, as I mature, as I learn things about life, so does my magic as well. So when I first started out, I was obviously like most magicians. I had a lot of gimmick tricks and I did so many different types of magic. But then I realized the cheapest option was playing cards because that's all I could afford. I stuck with playing cards. I also thought it was very cool, not just because it was cheap, but also because, you know, playing cards, it's very available everywhere. I was going through university at the time, so I was traveling a lot. So playing cards was just an easy object or tool to use for magic. Also, it happened to be kind of in at the time with David Blaine. That was kind of spiking up and all his TV shows coming out. And also Foolish at that time also just kind of started coming out, I think season 1 or something like that. And, you know, it was focused on close-up magic. So close-up magic in general was becoming very popular, and that's kind of my style, is why I chose close-up magic. In terms of the musical aspect and everything, I think that came through just with the way I took influence from my music career into magic. Because a lot of people say, oh, did you take theater classes? You must have done theater before. Were you an actor before? I even get that sometimes. No, none of those. I don't do any of those things. I came from a classical background. So a lot of the movements that you see me perform, a lot of the actions, everything, even the way I do magic and the way I even perform my sleights sometimes, came all from music. So if you notice, if you watch some of my music performances before, which you actually can't because none of them have been recorded, if you look at my music performances and my style, I perform the exact same way. Each movement is very justified. I don't really do a single moment unless I'm accomplishing something. And so hence why you'll see very little misdirection with my magic. You notice I don't do things to try to like misdirect. You know, sometimes some people will make a joke, some people will say look over there or something like that. Obviously with my acts, as you have seen, it's very focused on just this frame, and it's the same way with piano, and it's the same way I've always performed. So I didn't necessarily create anything new, I don't think. I was just myself. And I think, you know, a lot of people ask me probably, how do you find your style? And just be yourself. That really is the answer at the end of the day. Kind of use what you've learned from your life and apply it to your magic. You know, don't try to create a persona out of nothing, because that's being fake. So you don't want to do that. So the short answer is use a screen and cameras, right? That's the short answer. But it's a lot more complicated than that. I've seen a lot of close-up magicians, especially in competitions. You'll notice this in competitions because usually they won't be able to to then play to a bigger stage, and you'll see why. So in competitions like FISM and stuff like that, a lot of the close-up acts perform on stage, actually, believe it or not. The only reason is because the FISM is massive. FISM has like 4,000 people attending, and everyone wants to see the competition. That's the highlight of, you know, every magic competition. That's the highlight of FISM. And so, you know, when so many people are watching just the screen, if a close-up act has moments where he walks away from the lens, walks away from the frame in order to accomplish something, whether it be misdirection or just simply because the act has a lot of moving in it, you'll notice the people kind of have a hard time seeing that, you know, that act and how well it's supposed to be portrayed. The judges have a different view. The judges are actually able to watch it. You know, they get to sit like 10 feet away from the performer, but I'm talking about the mass audience. And so you'll notice those acts actually don't get to take that next step of being able to perform in a large scale, like cruise ships or theaters or on Broadway or whatever. It's hard to kind of take that next step. And I've always noticed this because FISM acts in order to get into FISM, you have to be really good. It has to be a great act. And a lot of people always question my acts, and they were saying, oh, well, you specifically made your act fit for the camera so that it would play well for the audience. And this is, this was, at the time, was pretty controversial because what the judges were saying, they were saying, well, why are you so focused on trying to please, just that singular lens? Because if you notice, all my acts is always structured this way. Now, for my show in Vegas, it's completely different. My show in Vegas, half of my acts are, for the lens, and the other half are communicating with the audience. So I'm just strictly talking about the musical acts here. And so my thinking and my reasoning for that is because when you do perform on a larger stage, when you do perform on a larger scale, you need to have kind of that real focus of just being able to perform just for that singular lens, and then that will then portray out onto the big screen. And that's very, very important. Regarding misdirection, and it's actually, I did talk a little bit in number 1 about this, and I simply don't rely on misdirection for my magic when I'm performing. I simply don't. That's my criteria, actually, when I'm coming up with it. If I were to use some form of misdirection, I would either need to be able to manipulate the way the framing is. So let's just say I need to steal a deck from down here, right? And I want everyone to look up here. I'm going to make sure that my framing for the camera is always here. So I'm doing something up here. Okay, so the cameraman's going to be distracted. He's going to pan up to here because something's happening up here. And because of this type of manipulation, now you're able to misdirect. You don't need to misdirect the people. You're misdirecting the cameraman. The cameraman comes up, you're doing something up here, and now you're able to do the deck switch. So this is something that at the time was very new. Not a lot of people knew about this, but if you're able to take advantage of that, it's really beneficial. And it's just a different way of viewing magic, really. I'm not exactly very calm and confident, actually, at all times. I'm actually quite nervous. But there are a couple of steps in order to take in order to try to relieve your stress. So my weakness is my hands start to shake a lot when I'm scared. My hands try to tremble. You'll notice if you watched my previous performances on AGT, especially the final round, I wasn't very confident with the act. My hands are shaking. So how I get over that, I have to take a couple of deep breaths first. You always remember to breathe for me, because for me, I tend to have a shortness of breath when I get really nervous, and because of that shortness of breath, I don't get enough oxygen, and because I don't have enough oxygen, my hands just don't get the energy it needs to be able to focus and perform properly. So yeah, it starts to shake, sweat a little bit on my fingertips, so it gets a little bit oily. But that one I actually solved by washing my hands with soap right before the performances. So like right before I go on stage, let's say I know it's a really scary performance and my hand starts to get oily or sweaty, I wash my hands thoroughly with soap, like with a bar soap. That way it removes any current oil that's on your hands. So in case you start to get sweaty later on throughout the performance, the oils don't come out and start interacting with the cards in ways that you don't want to. I know a lot of people come up to me and they say, oh, my hands are so sweaty, they always slip on the playing cards, I can't get that double lift or something like that. That's because you're sweating, yes, but it's not because of the water, it's because the oils on your hands are then getting on the card, and that's causing it to slip, and that's why you can't maybe do a palm, for example, or something like that. A lot of times it's because of the oils, so if you just get rid of all of that right before the showtime, you're all set. Yeah, talk shows has been kind of a crazy thing. You know, when they constantly invite you and tell you that we want you to do something new. It's a massive challenge for me to come up with multiple acts that I like. What's my criteria? I have to love it. If I don't love it, then I don't do it. You know, I have to find it very cool in order to perform it. Probably one of my most last-minute acts ever created was the one for Jimmy Fallon. I think I went on The Tonight Show where the four corners are jumping. I always had, you know, that whole black art principle down, but having the card appear on the shoulder, the smoke in the mouth with the card, and restoring the little corner restoring, you know, all of that was new to me, and so I had to create that about 12 hours or 24 hours beforehand, and kind of routine it. And at that time, we hadn't really scripted it either, so then I went to scripting. So that whole act was actually a mess. But regardless, I still really liked it. I thought it was very cool. That was a very cool act, and that's why I did it. So that's my criteria. I have to genuinely like something that I'm doing in order to perform. If I don't like it, I tend to just throw it away. You can ask people who've worked with me. They see me throw away an entire act just because I simply wasn't happy with it. That's just, I go through, I come up with 20 acts, I hate 19 of them, and then I love one. That's usually how it works when it comes to creating acts for talk shows. I don't really consider myself a trendsetter by any means. I feel like I've just always kind of done what I've liked in magic, the way I like it, because I thought it was cool. That's the main reason. And I'm just gonna keep doing it. I'm just gonna keep doing what I love, and I don't really necessarily, I'm not trying to be the trend or anything like that, or try to do the next cool thing. I'm never always like, okay, what's the next cool thing? I don't really care for that. I just want to do what I like, which is magic, and I want to always change things up. I love changing classics. That's what I've always done. That's what I'll keep doing. I love taking classics like the ambitious card and then making a new ambitious card routine, my version. You know, taking a card to impossible location concept and then turning into the dream act, or taking a Grandpa's Aces and then turning it into 52 Shades of Red. You know, all these acts, they didn't come out from nowhere. They came from little, you know, classic tricks that have already been invented. The Miser's Dream inspired my Jimmy Fallon act, the one with the floating cards. That, you know, all these classics are the reason why they're classics. There's a reason why they're so good. We're standing on the shoulders of legends, and we should respect them by making it better. And that's all I have to say about trends. I don't think that's a trend though. Okay. I think the craziest stuff was, and a lot of people already probably know this, was on AGT, they had changed the music very much last minute, and that was kind of the biggest stress for me, was because, you know, music and my acts are so synchronized, and so having to change all that is so, can be very terrifying, and I really struggled with that, having to come up with a new song like immediately, and then having to synchronize the entire act to the song. It's almost like practicing a dance to a new song, just if you think of it that way. And so that was probably my biggest hurdle to kind of go over. But other than that, no, a lot of TV shows have been very accommodating. They're very nice. And I think, you know, when you're a magician starting out going to TV, just remember that they are human as well. Live TV shows, they're not out to try to get anybody. I know a lot of people think that sometimes, but, you know, we're all human and they make mistakes. And so it's just really important for you as the performer to be ready for anything, for anything that could happen. That's kind of my advice when you're trying to get into these things and get into the business as well. You just really need to know your craft first, inside and out. So practice as much as possible with your family, with your friends. Those are the most important spectators, in my opinion. They will give you an honest critique. I think if you perform for strangers and you get an amazing reaction, that means nothing. It doesn't mean anything, because those aren't the critiques you're looking for. You're looking for an honest critique. You're looking for an honest evaluation of your improvement or lack of improvement. And and that's it. Yeah, that's my advice. All right, thanks guys. Later.
Das war's. War das nicht super? Ich hoffe, dass ihr aus diesem Interview genauso viel mitnehmen konntet wie ich. Ich möchte Shin nochmal ganz herzlich danken. Thank you Shin for doing this. It was amazing. Und ich danke euch dafür, dass ihr diese Zeit mit uns verbracht habt. Ich wünsche euch noch ganz viel Spaß. Das war euer Simeon. Tschüss.